I'm Holly Rubenstein, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Cline, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Cline, and I know you're going to love today's guest, Holly Rubenstein. Holly is the host, producer, and editor of the UK's number one travel podcast, The Travel Diaries. If you haven't listened to it yet, I highly encourage you to do so. Every week, she transports listeners around the world as she interviews a different high profile traveler about the 7 travel chapters of their life. Guests of the show have included Wolfgang Puck, Stanley Tucci, Brian Chesky, Joe Malone, and my personal favorite, Sir Richard Branson. She's a travel and entertainment journalist who regularly writes for outlets including The Telegraph, The Times, Evening Standard, Condé Nast Traveler, Tatler, and the list truly goes on and on. Holly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I know I covered a lot in that introduction, but tell us, how did you first get started in the travel industry?
So my career in journalism actually started in entertainment. So I kind of cut my chops working for Reuters, the news agency, and I was a red carpet reporter for them throughout my 20s. So I was, doing that typical Notting Hill style junket in the
Mm.
daytime and standing out in the freezing cold on red carpets waiting for George Clooney to stop and chat to me for a minute in the evenings. And that was my kind of route into journalism and broadcast journalism. And I was doing that for a while and working at the BBC as well. And then, kind of just on the side, I was writing more entertainment based features for the newspapers as well, just to, I guess get more experience with writing. And as a result, that kind of led into travel as another passion of mine. And I was really lucky that because I had relationships with the papers, I was able to get those early commissions and build up a kind of portfolio of writing that led me to become a contributing editor at Country and Townhouse magazine and have a double page spread every month in the magazine. That was kind of the original Travel Diaries kind of format. It was called The Bucket List, and I was interviewing celebrities about where they like to travel. And then from there, it kind of morphed into my podcast.
It's amazing. And I definitely want to go back to more of that red carpet reporting later. But something I thought that was really interesting from your background too was that I saw you studied at the London School of Economics as a
Hmm.
social anthropology major, which
Yes.
when I think about it, like actually feels really relevant to both journalism and travel.
Totally, yeah. And, it's the place where Sir David Attenborough studied. He studied social anthropology at LSE as well. So that was kind of when I was younger, part of the inspiration about why I wanted to go and study it. But you're right. You know, as people working in travel, we're interested in getting deeper under the skin of other cultures, other people, and we're curious. And that, the same with journalism. In fact, you could very much say when you're interviewing celebrities that they're almost like another tribe of people to analyze.
I love that, and so true, and just so funny what you said about really choosing the school and the major based on Sir David Attenborough, and it's funny because when we're kids, I feel like we don't even know, and even maybe as adults, we don't really know all the jobs and all the options that are out there for us, so it is just following those little pings along the way, I guess, and saying, "Hey, if it was good enough for Sir David Attenborough, maybe it's perfect for me."
Well, actually, at the time, I was trying to become a singer songwriter and I was recording an album at Abbey Road Studios. And so I had really that's what I thought I was going to be, a musician. So this was a convenient option because it was in London where I lived. And I was going to go to a kind of a really lovely campus university outside of London right to the last minute. But because my singing was going well, my songwriting was going well. That's why I stuck there. So it all led to where I am now because having my foot in the door in the music industry led me to get good early interviews when I
Sure.
decided not to carry on with that. And so I feel like it was all serendipitous in a way.
I mean, that's fascinating. Do you do any singing still today?
All the time in my house with my daughter.
Yeah.
I do. No, I don't, not anymore.
Oh,
But
what a shame.
I mean, not in a capacity where you might be able to discover it, but maybe one day. You never know. It's
Yeah.
definitely an instrument, and you need to keep it in good shape.
Yeah.
So I think I'd be a bit out of practice, but I do sing a lot around the house.
It's funny, I really wanted to be a professional dancer, and for part of
Oh,
my
did
high
you?
school, I went to performing arts high school for half the day and then regular high school for the other half of the day, and
Wow.
I thought I was gonna go to college and major in it, and I kinda had this aha moment about halfway through that high school experience where I thought, "If I'm not the best in this classroom, how am I gonna be the best in New York City or in the world or whatnot?" So, I feel like we all have these little secret talents hidden away,
Yeah.
parts of us.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see you dance.
Oh, well, I'm sure your daughter is very lucky to have nursery rhymes sung by you, but anyway, I'll leave that for another day. I know after studying at LSE, you then studied journalism at the City University of London. And so I'm just curious in general, as a journalist, like, what do you think makes a good story?
Well, I only did a kind of 1 month evening course at the City, so I didn't really study journalism. Where I really learned was on the job. But in
Mm.
terms of what think makes a good story is having a unique something unique to say. We're always taught why now, and that peg is the most kind of important thing. If it's something that's been told a million times before, then there's not going to be much appetite. So it's always about finding a fresh angle, a fresh take, a fresh story, a fresh voice that you can speak to.
That's amazing. I love that. Why you? Why now? I feel like that storytelling is something you do so well on the Travel Diaries. Your podcast
Thank
really
you.
brings listeners on a journey with your guests. How do you see the role of storytelling in the travel and hospitality space in general?
Oh, I mean, it's such a huge part of the customer experience,
Mhm.
isn't it? As a traveler, as a visitor to a hotel in particular, you know, to be able to get an understanding, to be able to get a feel of a destination through a place that you're staying in,
Mm.
I think is a real selling point of a hotel. And it's those kind of touches, be it, the welcome when you arrive at a hotel, just the greeting that you receive from somebody who gives you an overview of the place that you're staying in, the concierge, what they may be able to kind of encourage you to do to get a better feel for a destination. And then, the touches like the interiors, the cultural experiences that you could have as an excursion, all of that is really essential, I think, in terms of the storytelling of a destination.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to maybe storytelling on the red carpet and celebrities almost being a different tribe of their own, as you had very accurately said, you've interviewed some mega names on your show and probably prior to even starting your show. The show is now in its 13th season. Congrats. It's incredible. You've
Thanks.
had
Yeah.
in Blumenthal, Jane Goodall, Rick Stein. We mentioned earlier Brian Chesky, Stanley Tucci, Sir Richard Branson, who I just adore. Talking to celebrity is probably nothing new for you coming from music and then red carpet reporting. Do you still ever get nervous or how do you prepare for those conversations?
Yes, I do sometimes get nervous. I tend to not be nervous once it's started. What's amazing about being a podcaster is that you have this kind of agency, like it's just me, it's my business, it's my podcast. And so as a result, I'm also producing it. So I guess my anxiety often comes around like making sure that the sound works, all the kind of technical things work, because it's astonishing how many very famous people don't know how to work a computer.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind, or don't even have a pair of headphones in their house.
Yeah.
So that kind of management I find really tricky. The When I'm interviewing the people that were on my kind of dream guest wish list when I first came up with a concept for the podcast, and then after years of plugging away, trying to get it to materialize, those episodes I do get butterflies for at the start. And also I sometimes have a real gut instinct for interviews that I think might not be quite as easy,
Mhm.
and those ones I sometimes anticipate as well. But, certainly not like when I my very first red carpet interview was with George Clooney,
Wow.
and
Talk about
that was
setting
my
the
not
bar
my
high.
first interview. My boss threw me in right at the deep end,
Mhm.
and then I remember my literal breath being taken away. So, like, my cameraman had to give me a nudge on the shoulder. I was literally, like, lost for words.
Wow.
So, I've become a bit more, au fait with the celebs these days.
Do you have,
And it was
like
in that part of my career that I interviewed it was literally, like, on a daily basis, I'd interview so many high profile people, and the people on my podcast have been amazing.
yeah.
But I mean, it was that period when I was at the BBC and Reuters was just like, I forget sometimes that I interviewed these people because it was just every single day.
And I imagine too, there is something a bit more nerve-wracking maybe about being in person with somebody versus, like, being screens apart. Do you feel that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say so, apart from the technical side of things, but I do quite a lot in person now, which is nice. A lot of the guests that I have actually request to be in person, and you do get a different kind of, I don't know, you feel more like you've made a friend
Right.
afterwards when you've been in person, like,
Right.
or I like to think so anyway.
It's funny what you said about the technical side too, and about, this tribe of people potentially, not knowing where headphones are or how to plug things in. I had a similar experience when I was really early in my career working in fashion. My boss brought me to a celebrity dressing appointment before the Met Gala. And I
Oh,
remember
wow.
stopping at this extremely expensive jewelry store with her and presenting the earrings to this very famous person, and her just pushing her hair back behind, like, put them on for me, and my hands just shaking and thinking, "Don't stab her with these earrings right now." But you're right, it's like the little things that maybe they're used to having other people do for them, it could really make or break your interview, I imagine.
Yeah, it's true. But on the whole, I have to say, maybe it's the people that I pick,
Mhm.
to come on the podcast, but I would say that I've been very lucky to have some absolutely gorgeous, delightful people to talk to. And it's a completely different experience, really getting an hour with somebody and really getting to uncover really get under their skin. Whereas before I was just like getting 3 minutes, if that, a conveyor belt of interviews. So this is a
Right.
much more personal, rewarding side of journalism.
Yeah, and I imagine too, I love to think of, like, travel as, like, a great equalizer in the sense that the red carpet interviews that you were just mentioning, maybe you were talking about what they were wearing, or I don't know if you were starting to look for, little interesting tidbits about their personal life or what's going on
Yeah,
in the movies or
exactly.
what's next, or, those sound bites that media love. But for this, like you're talking about travel, there's no gotchas. You're just really getting to know them as a person. And that must be disarming to them in a really good way.
Totally. I've been told so many times that it's such a refreshing format for them and that they actually really enjoy it. And actually, because I send them the 7 chapters in advance, I don't ask them to tell me their answers in advance, but they, if they can, take a bit of time before the interview to think about their answers. And they often say how much they really enjoy doing that and that
Yeah.
it brought back a lot of memories because like I often say, and travel experiences, they really punctuate our lives.
Hmm.
And, there's some of the things that I think like we build the most neural pathways around, like we really remember them, the sights, the smells, the sounds. It's like such a sensory experience. And actually, one thing I've really noticed is that my guests often become very emotional on episodes, more so than I think they probably would do if they were on, say, like you know, a, a food one or a fashion one or something like. And I think
Sure.
it's because it just is travel is a very emotive part of our lives.
Yeah. What made you start the podcast back in 2019?
So I really, it was me loving podcasts, me seeing a gap in the market that there were so many kind of celebrity food or celebrity fashion or celebrity politics, or there was like a lot of people doing that celebrity interview format, but that I couldn't find one that really did the travel one. And I'm a nosy person. I really like to see on Instagram or wherever where people that I'm interested in are going on their holidays or where they like to travel. And so when I saw that there was a gap in the market, I was kind of at a bit of a crossroads with my career. I just left being an entertainment producer on the biggest kind of morning TV show here in the UK, Good Morning Britain. And I was going back into freelance life, and I was traveling around America actually for 7 weeks. My husband was taking a sabbatical, and I was reviewing, I don't know, 80 hotels, something absurd
Wow.
for that length of time. And what happened was I had my equipment with me just in case something kind of arose. I hadn't recorded any episodes yet. And then I got a call from Richard Branson's American agent and she said, "He's opening a hotel in San Francisco. Would you like to interview him in the lobby?" And I was down in, I think, Santa Cruz, and we just, like, plowed up through California to get there the next day and altered our plans. And while the interview is the shortest interview I've ever put out on the podcast, it was
Mm.
just such a great first guest to have. And then thankfully, I also had another Sir Ranulph Fiennes as my second recording. And so, and he's a legendary British explorer
Mhm.
that has crossed the Arctic and walked to the North Pole. He's really like a legend here. And so from there, I decided this was going to be my path. So I was actually, it's a funny thing to say, but I was one of the people that kind of benefited from COVID because no one could travel, but people were still really keen to be transported from their armchairs, and there
Sure.
was this whole notion of armchair travel, and it was written about a lot in the press. And so my podcast got a lot of publicity. It got put on the Apple homepage. It was in all the national papers here. And so very quickly it went from being something I was kind of trying as
Right.
part of a broader journalism career to becoming my full-time job.
Wow. And obviously, with guests like that, and then with press like that, you're seeing it's working. But I guess when you started it, did you think it was going to be as successful as it is now? I mean, number one podcast in the travel section in the UK. I think you're on in flight entertainment in certain airlines.
Yeah.
I mean, you are everywhere, Holly.
Mm. No, of course I didn't think that, but I do have a lot of, I'm quite ambitious and I'm quite determined. So, yeah, I suppose if I was gonna really give it my best shot, I'm one of those kind of people that I'm not gonna expect it to happen to me, like, I've got to make it happen for
Right.
myself. So, I was in those early seasons, I was on Rocket Reach looking for the personal email addresses of any business that I thought could sponsor me and sending them emails. And I was, messaging every agent, telling them about the podcast and taking every meeting that I can. So I was putting in as much hard work as I could to make it a editorial success, but also a commercial success as
Mhm.
well.
And the side of like producing and editing the podcast yourself, was that something you just figured out along the way? Or do you think coming from your entertainment reporting background and production background that helped?
Yeah, so I used to edit all the video when I did
Mhm.
the red carpet. So it was we'd be going out with a cameraman and I'd have a microphone and then I'd come back and I'd edit the video.
Mhm.
So that definitely was a help. And then I had to teach myself. But I just use GarageBand. So if anybody is a Mac user and interested in maybe starting a podcast, I plug my microphone into GarageBand and it is as simple as that. I'm not using anything advanced or high tech. My microphone is, a 70-pound microphone from Amazon and it all fits in my little backpack that I take if I'm in person. It's very lo-fi.
Wow. And I mean, GarageBand, you could start singing again too. Who knows? Maybe we'll get an
Exactly.
episode with
Now I
with
understand how
some
to
singing
use
on
it.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things I'm really impressed about with the Travel Diaries too is that you have really positioned it as its own brand. How did you do that? Or I guess more specifically, what is your approach to branding, to marketing?
Well, I'd be interested to know, like, what do you see as the Travel Diaries brand?
Oh, putting me on the spot. I like it. Okay. So I see it as like the way that you've positioned in terms of like 7 chapters, to me, it
Mhm.
feels very all encompassing around like travel is part of our life. It's not just like something that happens in certain moments. So it could be, a car journey with your family when you're young to, the most glamorous honeymoon. It's high, low, it's everything in between. And like you said at the start, really punctuating those moments. So almost heightening moments of our lives that might be happening anyway, for good, for bad, and making it that much more
Totally.
visceral.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so one of the most popular and long-lasting radio shows and now podcasts in the UK is called Desert Island Discs,
Mm.
and it's where the celebrities and all the top celebrities have been a guest on it, and it's where they pick the songs that have been, important to them, and then they chat about their life and career around it. And I'd say loosely I was inspired by that.
I could see that.
And that and but mine is more of a kind of trajectory through their lives. And it is nice, like you say, in terms of people enjoying the format. I mean, if you search the Travel Diaries on Google, which I do occasionally, there are so many like travel bloggers who have listened to the podcast and then chosen to write blogs about their 7 chapters. And I really like that people kind of have adopted, their hidden gem, their travel chapters. Like people talk about it like they're really familiar with it when they are in touch with me. And yeah, it's really reassuring and lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that absolutely, and can tell you from listening to the episodes, like, not just in your conversations with your guests, but the storytelling moments that come out of it. I always finish listening to an episode and think, "Oh, I need to go to Switzerland. Oh, I need to go to Puglia. I need to go wherever." Like, it really
Same.
you guys have such a
Same.
way of, and I think it goes back to those life moments again, right? Of it's not just like, "Go here because it's a nice hotel." It's like, "This is what happened while I was there, and this is why it was so special to me."
Totally, yeah. I mean, I'm exactly the same, and when I'm editing, I'm literally like, "Oh, maybe next year I'll go here and here and here." Oh, no, but then I really wanna fit in here, and would that be right with my daughter and blah, blah. Like, honestly, it's very wanderlust inducing.
Yeah, and speaking of your daughter, you are a mom to a little girl who's around the same age as my daughter, and I know she
Yeah.
travels with you a lot. So,
Yeah, she's
has the
turning
way
2 on Saturday.
2 on Saturday. Oh my gosh, happy
Yeah,
birthday. That's so
yeah.
exciting. Has the way that you've traveled, especially when you're traveling with her, changed? Or, is
Really,
she
it has.
okay? And
I
how
have to
so?
say, like, I'm a lot less intrepid at the moment. I see it as just being a moment, a period in my life where what I'm looking for in travel has changed. I'm not looking for a city break. I'm not looking for a huge amount of sightseeing. I'm really looking for the opportunity to be near a pool, be near the beach, be near sand, be near water, and for it to make the traveling experience as relaxing as it could possibly be while chasing around after a toddler. So I do feel like I'm slightly less of like a face for travel right now, in that I'm looking for more like family resorts. So I'm not like jetting off like on the other side of the world. I'm not doing much I haven't done any long haul travel with her, in fact, because I do think that when you live in London and you're only 2-3 hours from so many
So many places.
incredible destinations, my kind of viewpoint was like, right, well, this is the time to maximize what's on my doorstep, and what is more long haul will be, available to me when jet lag and things isn't such an alarming prospect. So yeah, I have changed how I travel, and I'm enjoying and I'm listen, seeing travel through the eyes of your own child is just there are shivers that come gone on the back of my neck just saying that. So I certainly don't feel like I've compromised.
I couldn't agree more. I'm the exact same way. I was one of those obnoxious people before having my daughter who said, children are portable. I'm going to live exactly the same life. And
So
my
so
child will
was
never
I.
eat chicken nuggets and will only eat sushi and, all the ridiculous claims that we make. And I think you're right. We were so fortunate that we had her when I was living in London, and our first trip with her was to Greece. And so to, Americans, they were like, "What? That was your first trip with her when she was 3 months old?" And like, yeah, well, it was easy. It was quick, it was convenient.
Yeah.
And now that we're back in New York, I have the exact same perspective as you, but unfortunately, I have less places on my doorstep. So I've now said, okay, I think this is my car journey era right now for the next, 6 months, a year.
Yeah,
A lot of places I
yeah,
can see. If I drive 5 hours from New York City, there's a lot to see. So
without
I
doubt.
I agree. I
And
think
then the occasional Caribbean trips, I guess, right?
exactly, exactly. We gotta squeeze them
Yeah,
in.
or
We actually are
Mexico.
bringing her back to the UK this coming December, which was a nightmare last year when we did it, but, hey ho, gotta keep trying.
Good luck. I'll be thinking of you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I appreciate that, and something I'm interested to get your perspective on is, I find that short-term rentals right now are often a better fit, so Airbnb, Verbos, whatever you wanna call them, often a better fit for us because she can have her own room, we don't have to go to bed at the same time as her, we have access to a kitchen, but obviously nothing beats a great hotel, so what are some things that maybe short-term rental owners or operators could learn from hotels to infuse a little bit of that magic into the stay? In the heart of Soho, New York City's arts and culture hub, lies your luxurious escape, the Dominic Hotel. Experience unparalleled amenities, including king size beds, spacious rooms, a fully equipped fitness center, a seasonal rooftop pool, and the renowned Sisley Spa. Savor Hawaiian inspired bites and cocktails at Terrace on 7 or innovative dishes at the Michelin starred Vestry. Book today using special code SUCCESS, that's SUCCESS, for 20% off your next stay of 2 nights or more in a suite through the end of the year. Visit thedominichotel.com to book. The Dominic, where every moment is an indulgence.
Oh, that's a really good question. What could they learn from hotels? Well, I suppose it's about the standard, isn't it? The
Mm,
standard that you're keeping in terms of maybe the quality of investing in maybe one or two rungs of linen higher than you might think is what you would want to be spending. Going that little bit further on the soft furnishings or the welcome basket in the on the table when you arrive. I think that for me, like lovely pillows, really nice linen, that's a gives you that like feeling like this is a special treat. This is why you're spending your money to be sleeping somewhere that isn't the bed, which you already know is comfortable at home.
sure.
So I would say that. I'd say cleanliness is another one, and I think it's sometimes a bit harder to well, it could you equally could be difficult in hotels when there's such a large turnover, but when you haven't got like an in-house team that is, employed to be turning over a room every day, I think making sure that that's like really, really prioritized is another thing that they can learn from hotels. And maybe that kind of personal recommendations that you can provide from your own experience being a host or living in the area, I think is really nice because people love a personal recommendation. You can feel that it's trusted. And yeah, I always love a personal recommendation myself, and I'll go off of that rather than anything I read in a guidebook or see on Instagram necessarily.
Absolutely. I think sometimes Google is so overwhelming. If you're like best restaurants here and you just get
Yeah, or TripAdvisor. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, exactly, and, it makes me think this last weekend, my husband, daughter, and I, we went to Newport, Rhode Island, which was beautiful and a great example of a place that I can explore in driving distance of New York City. Actually gave me a bit
yeah,
of, like, England by the Sea vibes, like, almost like Cornwall.
yeah,
It was really lovely, and when my husband booked our Airbnb, he asked the host, "Do you have a pack and play?" Or, "Do we need to bring our own?" She said, "Yeah, we should have one." So then as the trip approached, he had to reach out again to say, "Just confirming you do have the pack and play." And then we got like an automated message back from her, which did not address the pack and play. Then he had to message again saying, "So is there a pack and play?" And she said, "Yes." And then we arrived to the room and guess what? There was no pack and play. So we ended up finding it in like the cleaner's closet because it was like an apartment building type thing. But still, and then it's not to say that that mistake couldn't happen at a hotel, but it's those little things, right? Of like, that is really crucial to us. You can tell how important it is to us by how many times we messaged you about it. Therefore, you
totally.
make sure that it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I would say that my number one hotel pet peeve is asking, sending me an extensive preferences form that I
Mm,
then spend ages filling in, and then I'd say 7 times out of 10 I mean, no one seems to have any knowledge of any of the preferences I filled in, so what was the point?
Right. So you essentially just
So
did
that
homework for nothing.
yeah, totally, yeah, and it's
Right.
about asking me about important things like food intolerances or traveling with a baby
Right.
or yeah, so that I would say hotels could learn from that too.
And sticking with hotels, because as a travel journalist, you have just been to some of the most incredible hotels and resorts in the world. That is
So
your number
lucky.
one hotel pet peeve. What would be your, number one sign that like this is a great hotel? Or is there one?
A sign that it's a great hotel.
Or maybe the way that you would define a great hotel.
A great hotel, in essence, is a place that is better than where you're at home, that you don't want to go home from, in my opinion. You know, if you're in the most beautiful setting, but you're in bed and you can hear people talking in the room next to you, and there's no oat milk that you require for your baby in the fridge, then it's not gonna be as enjoyable as being at home, even if the setting is spectacular or even if, the city is one that you've always wanted to be in. So for me, a hotel is something that is, like, absolutely elevating my everyday life
Right.
and giving me wow moments. Walking around a corner, seeing an incredible vista of the sea, like, wow moment, having an incredible spa treatment that takes my breath away, like a wow moment, going down to breakfast, seeing still that excitement of seeing a massive buffet spread that just looks so enticing, like a wow moment. This personal touches of them putting a personalized pillowcase on our bed or a teddy in my daughter's cot that she's like overjoyed to have come across. I think it's those kind of personal wow moments, personalized moments, and kind of jaw on the floor, like, "I'm so happy to be here" moments that make a hotel stand out to me.
Have there been any examples of like incredible personalizations that you've received or seen?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky that I have reviewed a huge amount of luxury properties. So yeah, I've experienced that a lot. One place that stands out in particular that I returned from in the summer is a hotel called Porta Zanti. It's on the Greek island of Zakynthos. It's an 8 villa property, so it's 8 private villas that all have heated pools that look out over the beach, and as far as my own experience, having reviewed hundreds of hotels, it's got the best personalized service I've ever experienced. It was
Wow.
absolutely exceptional. So they knew all about my daughter and my daughter's preferences, and the fridge was fully stocked with everything that she would like. And there was a llama inflatable rubber ring that was in the pool ready for her, and they knew my dietary preferences, and there was a menu that was personalized to what we said that we liked, and if we wanted to do anything in our villa rather than in, like, the main restaurant, then they would just switch it over. It was absolutely incredible, the attention to detail.
Wow.
So I would say that in particular, and then I would say, like, the kind of Maldivian type resorts that, do incredible kind of not cheesy, but like gorgeous personalized things like in your room, on your bed that I think always put a smile on your face. Just a gesture like that is just lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes it feel like they know that you, Holly, or me, Katie, are there as opposed to just nameless, faceless
exactly.
guest.
Exactly that. But a place like Portasanti took it to another level, and it
Yeah.
felt like they had done their due diligence on us, and
Yeah.
they were just ready to let us know that they would be one step ahead of us.
So, first of all,
Like
tell them that I am now booking next year's holiday there thanks to that recommendation alone. I'm not joking. That sounds
oh my
incredible.
gosh,
And you
it
said the
is, it
entire
is.
hotel is 8 villas. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's actually like an extremely private hotel that has its own Golden Sand private beach.
Wow.
And it's very, very discreet. You're not allowed to take photos in the kind of communal areas because a lot of high profile people go there
Hmm.
to have their holidays. But what was amazing for me is that I felt as though it could really be almost in the Caribbean in that it looks out towards Kefalonia, like a completely uninterrupted view of the sea, palms everywhere, and I was just, like, so grateful that it was only a 3-hour flight away.
Yeah, that's incredible. Do you
Yeah.
feel like the ability to personalize to that extreme is because they're small and that it's not actually something the bigger hotels at scale are able to do? Or do you think that, whomever is running the ship there, that is just a real focus for them?
No, I think that maybe it being smaller might help, but I've been at much larger resorts where that level of attention to detail has been exceptional as
Mm,
well.
wow.
And I think it's about having a conversation. I mean, I don't really know, I can't claim to know much about, like, hotel operations, but I would imagine that having a meeting at the start of a day with all the key players and running through the kind of major preferences or new arrivals would be an opportune moment to share a few key pointers that people could be aware of. And then
Yeah.
I guess it's down to the caliber of the staff to whether that then ends up being executed.
Yeah, to make that possible. And even things like you said, dietary preferences and being on an island, probably taking the time in advance to make sure they've ordered the right things and have them all in stock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, when you fill out anything forms like that, and then when you get to, like I did at Portazanti, you get to your villa, that first breakfast, they've made you a gluten-free croissant that is better than any gluten-free product I'd ever tasted. And, they'd already anticipated that that would make me happy
Right.
to have a a homemade pastry that
Yep.
I could eat. That is the kind of thing that, like, lodges in my memory being like, "That place is, next level
Yeah.
above the rest." And in fact, what I don't give any credence really to the world's 50 best hotels list that has kind of come out in the last couple of years. Having said that, Pasalacqua Hotel was another absolutely exceptional hotel, and that was number
Mm,
1 the first year. But I would think that a hotel like Portosanti should be in it. Do you know what I mean?
right. Right.
It's not based off of the right criteria, so
So, Holly, last question for you before I ask you the final three questions that I ask everyone. And it's kind of a
yes.
bigger one, but, with your background and with how well traveled you are, do you have any predictions for the future of hotels or hospitality?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think that in terms of, oh, sorry, can you hear my dog barking? She's, maybe bringing your dog on more trips is gonna be a new travel trend. I have a Cavapoo called Indy, and I love bringing her away with me. I would love it if there was the same trend as there is in the US where you can take your dogs on flights. I've never taken her abroad. Have you ever been on a flight where there are animals next to you?
I have. When I moved to the UK, I flew with my dog, and when I moved back, I flew with
Did
him. Unfortunately,
you?
we lost him at the beginning of this year, but yeah,
So
he was
heartbreaking.
a big boy too, so it's kind of
Yeah.
wild, but
Not in the hold though, like actually on the plane with
no,
you?
actually with us, but he was an emotional
Wow.
support animal when that was allowed, and then a psychiatric assistance dog, so he
Oh.
had some very special credentials, I suppose.
Oh.
He was a
Well,
sweet boy.
in terms of other things that I kind of been predicting, I really think that slow travel is like the big one, road trips and train travel, and it's really exciting to see the gradual improvement of train travel here in Europe, and that there are some really exciting new routes that are coming up all over and that people need to keep their eye on. Some great ones through in Scandinavia and some new routes going through Italy as well. That will mean that, it's more accessible. I think that, at the moment, train travel is prohibitively expensive
Mhm.
actually a lot of the time, so that it's cheaper to fly. So if it becomes more egalitarian and we can actually afford to travel by train, then I think more people will choose it, because to be able to see the world go by and get that sense of place, like when you're arriving somewhere, I think it's fantastic, and it's a huge part of travel that I love.
I couldn't agree more. I also thought it was so great to do with my daughter, particularly when she was young. And I think the US is
Yeah.
even further behind the UK and
Yeah.
Europe. I mean, if you take a train from New York to Florida, if you drove that, it would take you about 24 hours depending on where you're going. The train would take you longer, and exactly what you said about cost, it would be so expensive, and we have a lot of work to do to get to
Yeah,
the
I
European
agree.
level.
I agree. There's a relatively new route through Florida, right? I think
I think so.
potentially, which has sped things up a little bit. But yeah, like you said, it's got a ways to go. But it's exciting that in Europe that people coming over from the States can quite reasonably like plan a trip that is multi-center and not necessarily have to drive or
Exactly.
fly. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so Holly, last 3 questions for you. And with your background, I know this first one is going to be extremely hard. We've touched on a few already. What was the best hospitality experience you've ever had?
Right. Let me think and make sure I give you my best answer. Okay. The best hospitality experience I had wasn't actually something that was personalized to me. It was actually for a huge hotel and they made everyone feel unbelievably special. It was at a hotel called Borgo Ignazia in Puglia. It's one of the world's best hotels. And on a Saturday night, they transform the middle of the hotel, which is it's based on a Pulian village. It feels as though it's been there for hundreds of years, but actually it was built not that long ago. But it feels so authentic. It sounds like a model village, but it's not. It feels like you're in an old Pulian village, and in the middle they line up these huge long trestle tables and they cover them in candles and flowers. It's like going to the most beautiful wedding you've ever experienced.
Wow.
You sit out in the heat of the night and then they put all the way around this huge market square. They have food stalls of every different kind and wine stalls and ice cream stalls. They have a massive band that's playing, and it, like, brought tears to my eyes when I walked around the corner and this whole square was twinkling and this music was going, and I was there with my daughter, and it was just one of those once in a lifetime unforgettable moments that they executed to perfection. So, yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind, but I didn't know that you were gonna ask me that question, so that's the first thing that I thought of.
I mean, that's incredible, and I could imagine the catalog that you have to go through is large, so I appreciate that. Hopefully, a shorter catalog to reach through. What was the worst hospitality experience you've ever had?
Oh. I think turning up to hotels when things aren't finished,
Okay.
essentially, has is always the most disappointing. So, when you get there and there's a pool that doesn't have any water in, or, there's I think over-promising. I'm not gonna be specific about a hotel, but I'd say over-promising on what can be delivered is just never going to work out. Like, don't blag it. Just let's celebrate what you do have and maybe don't open prematurely.
Yeah, that's good advice for just life and business there. Oh, under
Yeah.
promise, over deliver.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And finally, what does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, any person, any brand that you think has truly mastered it?
Hospitality Hospitality is generosity and kindness. It's something that comes from within. It's family, ultimately, I think. And to have that familiarity is so important when it comes to travel. You want to feel like you're being welcomed into somebody else's family, essentially. And in terms of brands that I think do that really, really well, I would say that Rosewood always has delivered for me. In fact, I actually got married at a Rosewood in Santa Barbara, just my
Amazing.
husband and I on the beach, but we've had always very good experiences. Peninsula to I'm trying to think, the Virgin Limited Edition properties, they also, really put an emphasis on great hospitality, but often it does come from the more independent hotels because they are more family run often and perhaps, as you say, kind of smaller to manage. And so, yeah, I would say that those have been some of my standouts as well. Yeah. But I mean, hospitality it's love at its purest form, really.
I love that. And Holly, it's just always such a pleasure to talk to you. And honestly, whether I'm listening to your podcast or chatting with you, I always leave our conversations needing to book a trip. So I think I'm going to have to go do that now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
All right, everyone, it's time for today's sweet summary where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. Isn't Holly just incredible? I love how she speaks about travel experiences punctuating our lives. I really couldn't agree more. For me, I think of family vacations to Disney World when I was growing up, or my first trip with my now husband, staying at a pretty gross motel in Nashville, yet somehow having a blast. That was quite the juxtaposition to our honeymoon, where half of the time we stayed at the St. Regis Maldives. Trips with my dog, the first trip with my daughter, our flight to move home, all punctuation marks to moments and times in my life. I suppose it makes sense that a journalist as talented as Holly would know a thing or two about punctuation. When she spoke about the journalism course that she took, I loved how she was quick to correct that most of what she now knows about journalism, she actually learned on the job. That can be such a powerful reminder for those of us who think we need just one more book or one more course or one more certificate before we can apply for a job or do what we know we're meant to do. In actuality, we tend to learn best by doing, not by reading about doing. I really like the concept of thinking about storytelling from the frame, why you, why now? In PR, we're always thinking in terms of angles, and I like adding this into my positioning arsenal. For someone like Holly, who has stayed at some of the top hotels around the world, I thought it was invaluable to hear from her what short-term rentals or even boutique hotels or B&Bs could be doing to improve their guest experience. First, she said it all comes back to the standard you're keeping. Are you providing your guests with quality linens, lovely pillows, gorgeous soft furnishings? Something that makes them feel like this stay alone is a special treat and therefore worthy of spending their money on, worthy of sacrificing a night away from home. Second, she talked about the importance of a welcome basket, how that little nod can make guests feel taken care of and seen. Third, she was adamant about the importance of providing your guests with those personal recommendations, places that you yourself have visited and loved, and that you believe would be a good fit for your guest and their specific group. For example, there's a wine bar that I love in Saratoga near one of our properties. It's called Bocage. If anyone's been there, it's a fantastic sparkling wine bar. But if I know a guest is visiting our place with a newborn baby, it probably wouldn't be the first place I'd recommend to them. Much like I wouldn't recommend my favorite playground to a group of singles who are visiting. Personal recommendations have to go both ways. A place that I love that is fitting for your specific trip with your specific group. And finally, cleanliness, which is, of course, table stakes. Without impeccable cleanliness, nothing else will matter. What continues to impress me most about Holly is her ambition and determination. And something she said during our chat feels like it should be a tattoo, or at the very least, a motivational poster. I'm not going to expect it to happen to me. I've got to make it happen for myself.